Are you living in a world of control and manipulation without even knowing it? Could we be in a society where totalitarian regimes aren't just a thing of the past? What if the lessons from history have not only shaped the world we live in, but continue to control us today? In this video, we're diving deep into the dark reality of totalitarianism. We'll explore Hannah Arendt's chilling analysis of how totalitarian systems rise, how they control every aspect of human life, and the terrifying role propaganda plays in these regimes. And we'll reveal how Adolf Hitler's regime is the prime example of this oppressive force in action. By the end of this video, you will understand the psychological tactics, the manipulations, and the horrifying consequences of totalitarianism. Trust me, this will change how you view the world. Let's dive in. Hannah Arendt's view on totalitarianism. Introduction to Hannah Arendt's political philosophy. Hannah Arendt, one of the most influential political theorists of the 20th century, dedicated her life to understanding how totalitarian systems emerge. Arendt wasn't just concerned with understanding authoritarian regimes. She wanted to uncover the deeper forces at play, forces that go beyond politics and into the realm of human psychology. In her iconic work, The Origins of Totalitarianism, Arendt sets the stage for a chilling examination of how societies become ripe for totalitarian rule. Arendt's concept of totalitarianism. For Arendt, totalitarianism was a unique form of government, a regime that goes far beyond dictatorship. It seeks to control not just the political system, but every aspect of its citizens' lives, including their private thoughts and beliefs. Totalitarianism doesn't just govern, it replaces the social fabric, reshaping how people see themselves, their relationships, and their world. Arendt argues that totalitarian regimes, like Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia, do not merely exercise control, but strive to erase any sense of reality outside their ideology. This systematic alteration of reality is what makes totalitarian regimes so insidious. They create a world where there is only one truth, the truth dictated by the state. The role of ideology, one of the core elements of totalitarianism, according to Arendt, is the totalizing power of ideology. Totalitarian regimes don't just govern, they infuse their ideology into the very fabric of society. This ideology tells people how to think, how to act, and even how to feel. It provides an all-encompassing narrative that justifies every action, no matter how extreme. The people no longer follow a leader, they follow an ideology that defines their entire existence. The concept of terror. Arendt argues that terror is the backbone of totalitarianism. Unlike typical authoritarian regimes that use force to maintain control, totalitarian regimes use terror to shape their society through the systematic use of violence, surveillance, and fear. These regimes suppress not just political opposition, but human spontaneity and creativity itself. Arendt describes how terror becomes a tool for turning the populace into obedient followers, eradicating personal freedom in the process. Mass mobilization and the destruction of the public realm. Arendt describes totalitarianism as a regime that thrives on mass mobilization. Totalitarian governments depend on the mass participation of citizens, not just in political life, but in maintaining the regime's ideological narrative. This collective action leads to the destruction of the public realm, where people could once engage in free discourse and independent thought. With the public sphere shattered, only the regime's voice is heard. The totalitarian leader becomes not just a political figure, but a symbolic representation of the ideology itself. The leader is not just a ruler, but the embodiment of the state's power and purpose. In this role, the leader is often seen as above all criticism and invulnerable, a mythic figure whose power is unquestionable. Arendt examines how this dynamic is used to justify atrocities and maintain an unwavering grip on power. The banality of evil. Perhaps Arendt's most famous and controversial idea is the banality of evil. Through her coverage of Adolf Eichmann's trial, Arendt explored how ordinary people could participate in horrific acts when they were caught up in a totalitarian system. Eichmann was a bureaucrat who followed orders without ever questioning their morality, illustrating how evil can become normalized within a totalitarian regime. Arendt's warnings for modern politics. Arendt's analysis of totalitarianism remains hauntingly relevant today. In a world where authoritarianism is on the rise, in some countries and populist movements continue to gain traction, Arendt's work serves as a stark warning. Her core message is clear: totalitarianism doesn't just destroy governments, it destroys people, their freedoms, and their ability to think independently. Adolf Hitler's totalitarian regime. Introduction to Hitler's rise to power. Adolf Hitler's rise to power wasn't a sudden event. It was the result of years of political maneuvering, economic chaos, and a deep-seated desire for vengeance after Germany's defeat in World War I, as the world grappled with the aftermath of the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler rose to prominence, promising a return to Germany's former glory. But behind his charismatic speeches and promises of restoration was a dangerous ideology that would lead to one of the most terrifying regimes in history. Hitler's ideology and the Nazi Party. At the core of Hitler's ideology was the idea of Aryan supremacy, an obsession with racial purity that justified the persecution of Jews, Romani people, disabled individuals, and anyone deemed undesirable. The Nazi Party under Hitler believed in the idea of the master race and sought to rid the world of what they saw as a corrupting influence. Hitler's vision of an expanded German empire through the concept of Lebensraum, living space, would provide fertile ground for the genocidal policies that followed. The establishment of a totalitarian state. Once Hitler became chancellor in 1933, he wasted no time in establishing a totalitarian state. Using the Reichstag fire as a pretext, Hitler pushed through the Reichstag fire decree and the Enabling Act, which gave him dictatorial powers. The Nazis eliminated political opposition, suspended civil liberties, and established a one-party state. Propaganda was heavily used to sway public opinion, and mass rallies were employed to reinforce Nazi ideology. The cult of personality. Hitler as the Führer. Hitler wasn't just a political leader. He was seen as the ultimate symbol of the Nazi state. The Führer principle placed Hitler at the center of German life, making him not just a head of state, but the personification of the people's will. Propaganda portrayed Hitler as a near-mythical figure whose decisions were infallible. This cult of personality was integral to maintaining the loyalty of the people and the control of the state. State-sponsored terror and repression. The Gestapo, the SS, and the SA Sturmabteilung were central to the enforcement of Nazi policies. These institutions were responsible for silencing opposition, eliminating perceived threats, and terrorizing the population into submission. Political opponents, intellectuals, and Jews were rounded up, arrested, and sent to concentration camps. Hitler's regime used violence, surveillance, and fear to maintain its totalitarian grip on power. The role of the SS and the Gestapo. The SS and Gestapo were the backbone of Nazi terror. The SS, originally established as Hitler's personal bodyguard, evolved into an elite paramilitary organization responsible for enforcing Nazi policies, including the Holocaust. The Gestapo, the secret police, used intimidation, surveillance, and torture to root out opposition and enforce Nazi control. World War II and the expansion of totalitarianism. Hitler's imperial ambitions led to World War II. Under his leadership, Nazi Germany invaded Poland in 1939, triggering a global conflict. As the war progressed, Nazi forces conquered much of Europe, where they implemented genocidal policies and war crimes. The Holocaust was the ultimate expression of totalitarian ideology. As millions of Jews, Romani people, and others were systematically exterminated. The fall of the Nazi regime. Hitler's regime eventually fell as the Allies closed in on Germany. By 1945, Germany was surrounded on all sides. Hitler, in his bunker, committed suicide, and the Nazi regime collapsed. The world was left to reckon with the horrors of the Holocaust and the totalitarian nightmare that Hitler had created. The fall of the Nazi regime was a powerful reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the impact of totalitarian ideologies.